Alright guys, this is our first YouTube video lesson at home. I have Parker here to introduce us the lesson. Parker, what do we have?
We're doing Chapter 21, Section 3, Exploration of the Moon.
Okay, let's get into it. Alright guys, title of this section is called Exploration of the Moon. Anything written in white is going to be equal to notes. This is just a depiction of what could happen on the moon in the future. Just shows you the astronauts and how they would set up a space camp or a moon camp in order to get water, oxygen, so actual regular people could go up to the moon and be on the moon and inhabit the moon. If you want, you can pause it here if you need to take down the notes. If not, I'm going to continue on in 2 seconds. Alright, this is the first slide after the title. A total of 6 lunar modules landed on the moon between 1969 and 1972. Neil Armstrong was the first man on the moon. It all started because of a competition with Russia. Russia had actually sent up the first unmanned spacecraft up into outer space, and it also sent out a manned spacecraft by the guy named Yuri Gagarin. And the U.S. wanted to compete with Russia because they wanted to be the first one up there. So President Kennedy, at the time, asked Congress to put together a space mission to go to the moon. So there were multiple missions to the moon, but the most famous ones are the Apollo missions, and there were 6 missions: Apollo 11, 12, 14, 15, 16, and 17 that went to the moon. 13, if you remember, didn't make it because Apollo 13 had some malfunctions. They actually got to go around the moon, but they never were able to land on the moon. In the later missions for 15, 16, and 17, they actually did some of the astronauts played some golf on the moon, and they noticed that the golf ball did go a little bit further. They used some of Newton's laws. They dropped down a hammer and a feather, and they saw that they both landed at the same time. And they actually used lunar rover vehicles to get over large distances of the moon. All right, at this point, I'm going to move on to the next slide. If you need to pause to take the rest of the notes down, you could do so now. All right, in 1998, the Lunar Prospector took pictures of the moon to determine if there was water. It was a long time after the Apollo missions were done up until this point in the 90s that we even did anything with the moon. We were trying to find water because we know that water would be a possibility of life and we could actually inhabit the moon. So with the Lunar Prospector, it had something that was attached to called a spectrometer, and it was able to determine that there were bits of hydrogen in the atmosphere of the moon, which means that there's a possibility that there was water. All right, again, I'm going to pause it. If you need to take the notes, just pause the video. Otherwise, we're going to move on to the next slide. In 2009, there was a really great experiment that was done. The Lunar Prospector was pretty much the prerequisite for this mission. The Lunar Crater Observatory and Sensing Satellite, better known as LCROSS, and the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter, LRO, were able to determine small amounts of water at the south pole of the moon. Now what happened was they actually sent a rocket into the south pole of the moon, and they fired it into the moon and into a crater that was there, and it shot up all of the dust, debris, and they were hoping that there would be some water that would also be put into the atmosphere from this rocket that was put into the crater. And the LCROSS and the LRO were able to detect small amounts of water. So we think that there are small amounts of water, especially down at the South Pole area, and probably in the future when we do manned missions and try to sustain life on the moon, we most likely will be going to the South Pole first. Once again, if you need to pause, you can do it. Otherwise, I'm going to move on to the next slide. This slide just talks a little bit about future lunar missions. They have been planned out. There's been some big troubles with budgets and money on how it's going to be funded to get to the moon. President Bush in 2005 installed this constellation plan where he wanted to reach the moon by 2018 and then go to Mars past that. Since then, Obama in 2010 canceled the constellation plan along with Congress, and right now there isn't many plans. Congress says that it's just too much money to go to the moon. President Obama's push now is for to privatize a lot of these space programs and not have to fund it through public money and taxes, but to fund it privately. So as of right now, we're kind of in limbo. We have some unmanned missions going to the moon, but as for sending humans to the moon, as of right now, the United States is not going to be doing it. There's some other countries that want to do it. India, China, Russia all have aspirations to go to the moon, and they do have some planned missions again around 2020, but there is still no concrete sign or evidence that there will be any manned mission to the moon at this time. All right, this ends our section for Chapter 21, Section 3. Hopefully we've gotten all the notes down. If you need to go back, you can go back and look at the notes, and I will see you tomorrow. Please make sure you have all the notes because they will be checked as a homework assignment. Thank you. All right, guys, this concludes Chapter 21, Section 3. Please make sure you bring your notes in tomorrow. Also, you need to bring in your other worksheets. This includes the Activity 1 and 2 worksheet and the Earth's Moon worksheet. And for the honors classes, you also need to make sure you bring in your moon phases worksheet. Okay, see everyone tomorrow. Bye.